Hey, what's going on everybody? Welcome back to the channel. It's Jordan here, and on today's video we're diving into my bread and butter and we're talking real estate and specifically the 9 mistakes that I see first-time homebuyers make. So definitely tune in to the video and listen to the very end as I'm going to be debunking one of the biggest myths in real estate. So buckle up, let's get into the details. If this is your first time here, welcome. This is the #1 spot for young professionals advancing in their personal and professional lives. We talk about all things real estate, business, personal development, professional development, as well as personal finance. So you've come to the right spot. Hoping you like this content. If you've been here before, thank you for coming back and tuning back in. If you can do me a favor and smash that subscribe button, give me a thumbs up and like this video, as well as leave a comment in the comment section below. So without further ado, let's dive into the very first mistake that I see first-time homebuyers make. Not starting the process soon enough. I can't stress this enough. It takes time to ultimately identify and close on a property. So don't think you can do it in 30 days. If you have cash, that's a different story. We're not gonna get into that in this video. You're typically financing a deal, which most, I would say on average, 80 to 90%, if not more, home buyers that I work with, they're working with the lender and they're getting financing. But it takes time to get a loan approved. So as a rule of thumb, I wanna make sure that people are starting their search probably about 3 to 4 months in advance of whenever that drop dead date is that they need to be in that new property. The reason I say this is typically I will work backwards, and when I'm working with buyers that reach out to me and they wanna get the process going of buying a home, I basically let them know, hey, let's figure out what the drop dead date is and let's work backwards so that we know how to make sure that we stay on track and that we're hitting deadlines along the way. You want to give yourself, just for the contract to close process alone, which is basically from the time you go under contract to the time you actually close on that property, given that you're getting financing, you need about 30 to 60 days. But you also got to bake in time to learn the process by working with your realtor and getting educated on the ins and outs, A to Z process, so that you know exactly what's to come and that there are no surprises throughout. I think 3.5 is probably the perfect buffer, which gives you just a little bit more time so that you don't feel rushed. Number 2 I see is that people are wanting to get antsy and start the search process before they actually get financially qualified to buy a home. Whether that's a pre-qualification or a pre-approval, that is the very first thing I'm gonna go send you to do if you have not done it for the time that we meet for our initial buyer consultation. That'll be one of the first questions. Hey, have you talked to a lender? Have you figured out roughly how much you wanna spend or what you want your monthly payment to look like when you find this property and close on it, so that it's a nice, comfortable number for you. So if you have not yet talked to a lender at the time of that meeting, that's gonna be the very first thing I do before I even take us out to look at properties together. That is the key. You don't wanna get out and start looking at properties that you may later come to realize might be at a lower price point than what you're looking for, or potentially it might be something that you can't afford based on what the lender tells you when you speak to that lender and you go through your financials and the loan options available to you. And there's nothing wrong with connecting with a realtor first and then figuring out who they like to work with from a lending perspective and then having them make a warm intro. That's typically the way I prefer it as a realtor, is that I have my buyer clients working with my lender. It's a preferred lender of mine. It's a good relationship. We've closed many deals in the past on time, no issues. So don't skip that crucial part of the process, because that will make you feel so much more comfortable. It'll give you so much more clarity around the finances involved in buying a home. So since we're on the finance topic, the third mistake that I see people make is that they underestimate the amount that it costs to buy a home. Not only are you needing to save money and have liquid cash for a down payment, but you have things called closing costs. Closing costs vary from state to city. Here in Chicago, where I operate, closing costs are gonna be about 2 to 3%. So let's just use the figure 2.5% of the purchase price in additional costs and fees associated by the time you close on that property that you're gonna need to have. So let's just say that most people are like, hey, I got my 20% or I have my 10% for my down payment. There's gonna be about 2.5% of the purchase price of additional costs associated in order to close on that home. A couple things that stand out to me from a closing cost perspective are things like attorney fees, inspection fees, appraisal fees. The biggest one, at least here in Illinois and in Chicago, is that you're paying transfer taxes. So you have city, state, and local transfer taxes, how that can get kind of out of control if you're not taking that into consideration. To wrap this up into a bow, the rule of thumb I like to give my clients, that there are no surprises on the financial side of things, is that you want to have 2.5% more than whatever you're planning to put down as a down payment. So 5%, make sure you have 7.5, 10%, 12.5, 20%, 22.5. So with that being said, let's kind of move into a different topic and let's talk about the fourth mistake that I see first-time homebuyers make. And it's that they are too picky And I know that sounds crazy because you're buying a home, you're spending a ton of money, and you're like, hey, I need to get everything I want, which I don't blame you. You know, you want to make sure that the home is the perfect place for you and that you're going to be very happy with your financial investment and ultimately the lifestyle that this home is going to create. However, let's just call 80 to 90% being a home run and just knocking it out of the park. So by the time we get out and look at properties, unless you're buying new construction, you know, even if you are buying new construction, typically you're not going to get every single thing on your wish list. And if you find that home that has 80 to 90% in comparison to the other things that you see, you should probably pull the trigger on that property. My buyers are typically pretty surprised when I start talking about the average number of properties that my clients see before they actually write an offer on a property. And it is about 5 to 10 properties that a buyer will see with me before they write. And I think there's a couple things that lead to this. I think the first thing that kind of causes this amount of properties that we need to see to shrink is that the consumer has all this information at their fingertips these days. They're looking at properties day in and day out online. So they're already tailoring their search pretty drastically by the time they ever even get in touch with you. What I do always say though is that it's a lot different to look at properties in person than it is online. So it's very critical that we eventually get out to see them. But then by the time we go out for that first tour, we're typically seeing 5 to 10 properties before they make an offer on a home. All right, so that leads us to our next mistake, which is kind of on the flip side of this. People will get so obsessed about one home in particular, and this is a very, very, very good way to set you up for failure. I hate to say it, but it's just an unpredictable market in real estate sometimes. You know, there's supply and demand, there's other competition. So sometimes I make sure that my buyers are having option A, B, and C. You know, I want to make sure that there's 2 or 3 properties that could be the perfect fit if option A or option B, for whatever reason, is no longer an option. At the end of the day, you're going to love what you ultimately end up choosing, but just make sure you have a couple options and don't get overly obsessed about one particular property. 6th mistake, people get too caught up in wanting to buy a home that increases significantly in value over time. Of course, you want to buy a good, sound investment. However, at least from the time that I've been in the industry, I've been in the business since 2014, I've been in a very frothy market, a very strong market. And we all know that something's around the corner, right? There's some type of economic stabilization or just a softening of the market that we're going to see because we've been in a bull market for way too long. COVID-19 has painted a picture that has some uncertainty to it. You know, there might be some additional runway just because of some of the things that have happened, or we might see a short end of the stick, right? So eventually though, what I've been talking to my clients, statistically, we identified as realtors the height of the market as, at least here in Chicago, as December of 2017. Every market around the country is going to be slightly different, but here, just as an example, December of 2017 was the height. And so ever since that date, I've been basically prepping my clients that, hey, if you buy this property, don't be alarmed if in that first year, 2 years, even maybe up to 5 or 6 years, that your property decreases in value before it ultimately increases and then passes that threshold of what you bought that property for. Real estate is something, if you buy it and hold it long term, it is surely going to appreciate over time. The trend curve is definitely a step up, but it's always in the upward trajectory, right? So, but you gotta hold something long enough for that to take place and for that compound effect to take in. Just know that you gotta buy something that if you had to rent it out today, hopefully you can at least break even with the current rental rates and the fair market rentals in that area. That's kind of your way to hedge that a little bit, but you got to ride the historical data, you got to ride the cycle, especially in a bull market where I think we're probably going to see some softening in the next couple of years. It's important not to overpay for a property and just don't get alarmed and make sure that you weather the storm and that you ride out your investment so that ultimately you make the money you want or the goals that you have for that property. Well, we're back, set the mood for you. It is now dark outside. And yes, I've been filming this video all day long. No, I'm just kidding. I had to cut for a couple of meetings, but wanted to come back here. And unfortunately, I don't know how to deal with this lighting. New YouTuber, you know how it is. You gotta support new YouTubers. So do that by hitting the subscribe button, if you don't mind, and leaving a like and a comment and sharing this with a friend. Without further ado, 7 is that they're not taking into consideration market factors when they're trying to buy a home. People go into a situation where they always just think they can negotiate off of the listing price. And that's just not true in every situation. It could be true. There's a lot of different motivations and a lot of different scenarios of buying and selling a property. Ever since I've been in the business since 2014, we've been in a seller's market, right? So there's been more demand or the demand is outpacing supply, which ultimately raises prices, leads to multiple offers, and just very low inventory, not every time you're gonna be able to get a deal. Sometimes I'll say, hey, well, I think you might be good, 5% off of ask. Other times I might say, hey, you gotta pay 5% more in order to even get this property because there's 4 other buyers that also want this property. With that being said, just know that every single property is situational. It's case by case basis. Don't think you're gonna go in and get a crazy good deal on every single home. You gotta be reasonable, and that's why you need to be working with a good real estate professional to make sure that they're kind of asking the right questions, they're building rapport, they're understanding motivations of the seller so that you can put the best offer together possible so that you have better chances of getting it accepted. All right, number 8, I love this one, and just because it causes so many headaches, don't make this mistake, and don't expect a non-new construction property to be perfect. A property is a living, breathing object. And I have so many times where buyers buy something, they get their inspection done, and during the inspection, there's a lot of cosmetic things that add up that they just feel should be fixed. And unfortunately, when it comes to an inspection, after you go under contract on a property, really the 2 main purposes of that inspection are to look for material defects and health and safety issues, cosmetic things off the tables. So if you're not buying new construction, you just need to make sure that you're reasonable, that you're calling out any of the more significant health and safety issues or material defects. But you also have to understand that there's some element of maintenance and there's some element of, hey, there might need to be what I would like to call handyman fixes that you're gonna wanna do when you move in. Just don't expect it to be brand new construction. All right, well, if you've made it this far, first off, thank you. This has been valuable. Please do me a favor, hit the subscribe button, leave me a like, and maybe leave a comment in the comment section below. I would love to engage with you guys, really build this community that I want to build. That's why I'm doing the YouTube channel, is to give you education and to build a community so we as young professionals can all succeed at a higher level faster. So a high tide rises all ships and iron sharpens iron. I believe that fully. Thank you for the support. Definitely hit that subscribe and that like button. Number 9 is basically us debunking a huge myth, which is also a huge mistake that I see a lot of first-time home buyers make, and that's them trying not to use a buyer's agent and going directly through the listing agent to purchase the property. So the traditional thinking is if I can go in and approach a property or the listing agent of a property without a buyer that's representing me, a buyer's agent, then I'm gonna be able to get a better deal because that seller now doesn't have to pay the buyer's commission, so I'm gonna be able to save that 2.5% or 3%, whatever the number might be. So just know that that's just not how it works. So what most people don't know, or some don't know I should say, is that the commission is established strictly between the listing agent and the seller. So they have a contractual agreement that states, okay, maybe it's 5%, 6%. The commission's negotiable. Let's just know that first off. There's no standard commission rate, but the seller is actually the one who establishes the total commission on the deal. So if it's 5 or 6%, let's just say those are some of the more common percentages of commissions, then maybe the 2.5% is going to the buyer's agent. So a lot of buyers think, okay, well, if 2.5%, if they think 2.5% is going to the buyer's agent, then maybe I can save that by having the seller not have to pay that extra 2.5%. So if they're paying 5%, now they're only really paying 2.5%. So their net amount that they need to pay to sell that property now becomes 2.5% less. But unless that listing agent and that seller go back and explicitly re-sign and re-modify that listing agreement that they originally had in place before you as the buyer ever came along, technically that listing agent would be entitled to the full commission. If it's free for you to use a real estate agent, why would you not take advantage of that? You gotta have an agent to protect you. They're gonna help you through that offer process, helping you establish fair market value, talking with the listing agent to get as much details about the motivation of the seller and what's important to the seller in the sale of this property so that you guys can construct the best offer possible. I want to make sure that you're being protected, not only by your real estate attorney, but by also a very savvy and well-respected real estate agent. So that's it, that's the 9. Hopefully this is helpful. I see so many people making these mistakes, and it ultimately impacts whether they make a good and savvy real estate investment or not. You know, everyone buys real estate for different reasons, so maybe not all of these mistakes are something that you think you would do or that you've done in the past, or maybe things that you think you need to even avoid. But I just wanted to give you 9 of the many mistakes that I see. These are the 9 of the ones I see most commonly, which is leading to a stressful process and an experience of home buying that they shouldn't have. As long as you avoid these 9 mistakes, then you're gonna be a lot better off and a lot more prepared to make sure that you make a good, sound investment. So with that being said, that's the rest of the video for the day. I did want to remind everybody that through my involvement over the last 7 years of selling full-time, I've built a robust network of real estate agents, best in class from around the entire nation. Whether it's you or a friend is moving somewhere within the country, or if they're moving to Chicago, I can help either way. Just hit the email address down below, send a message, let me know what market you need a real estate agent in, or where you're coming from and what your goals are in real estate, so that we can get on the phone and we can talk through those together. So that's all I gotta say. That's the 9 mistakes I see first-time home buyers make. Whatever you can do, just try to avoid the pitfalls that are gonna make this a very stressful transaction. It doesn't have to be. Just make sure you're avoiding these 9 mistakes when you're buying your first property. So if this has been any value to you at all, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button before you go. I would appreciate a thumbs up and a like down below, and leave a comment. I want to hear what you think about this. If you have any other questions or things to avoid as you're going through this home buying process, and then share this with a friend. I'm sure that they would appreciate it, and I do as well, for you sharing the love and spreading exposure for my channels. Thank you so much for being here with us today on this video, and we'll see you on the next one.